Gentlemen, and degenerates of all kinds, and those who don't give a damn. Imagine, if you will, the gay Yakuza. No, not that gay Yakuza. Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Light District, where we objectify men. My name is Ku, and I'll be your humble host for the evening. This will be the first installment in a series of movie reviews I'm doing on boys love films. This is a brand new channel and I'm learning as I go, so any support is greatly appreciated. Before we begin, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when I make new videos. And if you like this video, I hope you'll share it. Just a little something to help the algorithm going. Y si no habla inglés, puede activar los subtítulos en español. Traducción de Wolftendo de Twitter. Muchas gracias, mi amor. So without further ado, let's dive right into Twittering Birds Never Fly, The Clouds Gather. Grab a cocktail, everyone.
Hey, no. You
Just cut to the title sequence. Originally released in Japan since March 2008 as a manga, Twittering Birds Never Fly has since gone on to be one of the most successful yaoi series in current times. It has nearly 2 million copies in print worldwide across 7 volumes, 4 of them available in English and still ongoing, and 3 movies planned with 1 OVA that was just released this month. Now, I actually live in Japan, so I was originally very privileged to go see this movie when it was released in theaters back in 2020. And I actually remember leaving the theater really disappointed with the film. However, watching it back now a year later, my thoughts have really softened on it. The animation isn't anything to write home about, but scenery shots have a lot of bright colors and special effects. CGI that they use for environmental textures like smoke trails off their cigarettes or rain effects are very fluid and just really nice to look at. So the technical aspect is a bit mixed. However, I credit this mostly to Studio Grizzly being a fairly new studio, and Twittering Birds Never Fly is their second ever production, and the first film they've ever done. That's kind of a big order, and no doubt there were a lot of challenges when it came to stretching the animation budget, so I'll give it a bit of a pass. The story is centered around the high-ranking Yakuza leader named Yashido, who is leading a financing company as a front for their branch's operations. He's also a sadistic, slutty cat who prides himself as the self-proclaimed public toilet of the office. Wait, the what?
幹部の公衆便所
The what?
公衆便所公衆便所
Okay then. Although Yashido promises to never lay a hand on his subordinates, that doesn't stop him from trying to rail and get railed by anyone and everyone his Yakuza family takes in, even going so far as to make it an initiation requirement for some, including the new man he's hired, Domaki. Only one problem. Domaki is impotent. He may be a 200-pound walking beefcake, but Yashido will be dining on limp noodles when it comes to this guy. It's a good setup putting someone like Yashido in a position with this emotionally distant bodyguard who can't even get an erection, and they're forced to be around each other all the time. Plus, as bar artist Guy Mizuki once said in an interview, Yakuza stories are a really easy theme to work with for boys' love stories because only men are in the Yakuza. However, there are a few negative aspects to this narrative, and it kinda more has to do with how it's told, not what's told. Typically speaking, a lot of yaoi media has subplots beyond the main relationship, and that helps provide direction other than general character interaction. In doing so, the audience has more reason to be invested in not just the characters, but the whole world that these characters are a part of. For example, Junjo Romantica will give us insight into Japan's publishing business, while Misaki has this elongated coming-of-age story as he learns to navigate his life from just entering college all the way until he gets his first job after graduation. Or then there's Given, which follows a band's foundation and climb to fame from little bars all the way to small music festivals. And while Twittering Birds Never Fly has subplots in its own regards, they tend to only be mentioned in vague passing, almost like the story can't even decide if it wants to include them or not, at least for this first film in the trilogy. But we'll cover that in a minute. The setup sounds interesting, but the execution, at least for this first film, it's so slow cooked that I imagine Daft Punk will go on tour before the film even ends. The movie starts off as just another evening for Yashido in watching his subordinates getting their teeth knocked in, attempting to take on new hires, and then watching his private doctor bang his new boyfriend via a hidden camera from his office. Enter Domaki and, ooh girl, this man is a steak cake. I love me some steak cake. In fact, I just love saying steak cake. Everybody, let's say it together. Domaki is a what? Steak cake. Boom! Delicious. Now where were we? Oh yes. Although he's aware of Yashido's reputation as the banjo and what he expects of his underlings, Domaki is in just as tight of a situation as him. Domaki needs a job after having just got off of a prison sentence, and Yashido needs a new bodyguard because of the growing tension with other Yakuza gangs, thanks to numerous off-screen turf wars. Meanwhile, those who are higher on the Yakuza food chain than Yashido are getting ready to retire and promote new people to lead the entire gang. Remember how we talked about subplots a moment ago? Well, these are the subplots we get, but they are only mentioned briefly in a few scenes over a cocktail and met with minimum reaction. Every time Yashido's superior talks about his running for a promotion, or he has to pick up one of his underlings from their private doctor after their own turf battles, Yashido makes little acknowledgement and instead goes off on internal monologues, reminiscing about his relationships with the people in the room. And then the film cuts to his next attempt to slobber all over Domaki's Yaki Udon banjo. The star of this story doesn't care about any of these other plot points, so in turn, why should we care as the audience? Yashido's boss and rival gang members are also somewhat lacking in screen time, so we don't really get to fall in love with them or understand their motives. For the most part, all the talk of turf wars and the Yakuza food chain feels like it's kind of just shoehorned in for the sake of keeping characters in the same room for a few minutes. This kind of storytelling is fine in manga because those loose ends can be quickly tied up after you turn the page, but for a movie, it just doesn't really transition that well. All Yashido seems to want is to bask in lust every day of his life. Domaki being impotent obviously puts a snag in that plan, but the reason behind Domaki's ravioli cannoli is actually every bit as tragic as it is disturbing. Prior to his prison sentence, Domaki is revealed to have once been on the side of law enforcement as a police officer, sent to jail and losing his badge for committing assault on his own father. But wait, there's more! It turns out Domaki actually has an adoptive sister who developed romantic feelings for him when he was in high school. Creeped out and hoping to extinguish her ancestral desires, he ignored her, pretended like she didn't exist for years until he graduated from the police academy. That night, when he came home to give his family the big news, Domaki caught his sister engaged in sexual relations with their father. Enraged, Domaki attacks his father and goes to jail on assault charges to cover up and protect his sister's reputation. Upon release, he had the intention of being a law-abiding citizen, thinking that he had just taken a job with a normal financing company. When he learns that it's actually with the Yakuza, Domaki stays upon finding Yashido to be so beautiful that he starts to second-guess his opinion of the Yakuza entirely. Since these subplots don't have relation to one another, the focus of the film can feel a bit disjointed, and conflict resolution feels rushed, using the first hour to introduce characters, build relationship, and conclude Domaki's trauma with his sister before she makes a very hasty exit from the story altogether.
Sashay away.
The last 30 minutes of the film is where the Yakuza-related drama finally comes into play. The plot juggles Yashiro's crew getting into off-screen turf wars while explaining more of his and Domaki's sexual trauma, which at this point finally starts to feel like the peaks and valleys we need in the story now that we only have two things to focus on. Those Yakuza underlings that were ignored for the first hour finally get a bit of one-on-one screen time with Domaki at a bar, and they reveal their own opinions and experience in working under Yashiro over the years, which puts Yashiro's character in a whole different light. For the entire film, Yashiro presents himself to be this ruthless, snarky, uncaring, lust-crazy snake, but even his own underlings are able to see that it's this internal defense mechanism he uses to keep others from getting close to him, finding himself so damaged after years of sexual abuse that he'd be unable to hold a genuine relationship. There's a lot to be said for how pitiful Yashiro actually is, and how much effort he puts in to keep himself isolated. And yet, the minute he's alone, he's plagued by loneliness that pipelines right into his lust-driven desperation. And that, in turn, results in more pain and more trauma, causing his cycle to repeat. At one point in the film, he claims that he's completely accepted himself and that he doesn't envy any other person he's ever met, but is that really true? Is there really nothing about him he wouldn't change if he could? All he seems to want is in fact right in front of him, but he beats himself up harder than he beats the meat on a Saturday night, denying himself the love and companionship that others are ready and willing to give him at any moment. Is his sadistic nature really a defense mechanism, or is it guilt in a form of self-punishment for letting his trauma haunt him his entire life? Maybe he's playing a sadistic tyrant because of a narrow perspective on the kind of person he feels he has to be, given his trauma and his present role as a Yakuza leader. Maybe he's just constipated. We could go for several minutes about how complicated of a character Yashiro actually is, but maybe character analysis and study is best left for another video when we have more of the story to actually take a look at. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. On further positive note, the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. H. Zetrio did some great work in combining jazz, swing, lounge, and ballad melodies that just really grabs your attention, and it's just really fun to listen to on its own. Then you have Omoi no Take, who composed the main theme song, Moratorium, which expresses this very tearful sorrow that falls on the characters in the final scene.
What the fuck is that? I know I ain't crazy.
As sad and suspenseful as the ending is, it still feels a little out of the blue and confusing, which isn't the case in the manga, with the fact that the film ends at what is only the midpoint of the second volume. For manga readers, you'd just turn the page and keep reading for the next 3 or 4 chapters for what is supposed to be the real conclusion. While the film is faithful to the source material, it isn't very kind to newcomers, which isn't a good thing for what's supposed to be something to serve as an introduction to the series. Had this been a TV anime or a live-action drama, it probably wouldn't feel so disjointed by the end of its first season. It's a lot of mixed feelings caught between wanting to love and praise this movie for wanting to slow roast the romance like the manga, but also wanting a little more so we're not left entirely blue-balled at the end. For a final tally, I'll be soft with this and give Twittering Birds Never Fly, The Clouds Gather, 7 out of 10, too much water. So where do we go from here? Well, next is actually the prequel OVA titled Don't Stay Gold. Then the sequel film, The Storm Breaks, which still doesn't have a confirmed release period, most likely due to COVID delays. Until then, thank you everyone for joining me this evening. Until next time when you decide to wander into the Blue Light District.
この空が泣き止んでしまえば君は帰るべき場所へ
I have a challenge for you. Get your ass a motherfucking job challenge. Pick up your phone. Hi, Taco Bell. Yes, are you hiring today? Oh, great. I will be down there and fill out the application. Thank you. Hi, Pizza Hut. Are you hiring? Oh, you are. Delivery drivers. Oh, great. I will be down today to fill out an application. Thank you. Challenge. Get a fucking job. Do that challenge.